June 1943. Deep in the heart of Mississippi, something unprecedented was happening. The United States had just opened a special POW camp, not for ordinary soldiers, but for captured German generals. These weren't just any prisoners. These were the military elite of Nazi Germany. Generals who had commanded divisions across North Africa and Europe. Men who had led thousands of troops in Hitler's war machine. And the Americans were about to do something that would shock them to their core. Something that would challenge everything they believed about power, control, and what it meant to be a prisoner of war. The Americans were going to let them cook their own food. When General Major Hans Kramer and 23 other high-ranking German officers arrived at Camp Clinton, they expected the worst. In German POW camps, prisoners were given minimal rations, often spoiled or deliberately inadequate. Food was a weapon, a tool of humiliation and control. The idea was to break the spirit of captured enemies, to remind them daily of their defeat. So when the American camp commander, Colonel William Maxwell, made his announcement, the Germans thought it was a trick. Colonel Maxwell, act a gentleman. You will find that the accommodations here meet the standards of the Geneva Convention. You will be treated as officers. That includes the right to prepare your own meals if you so choose. General Kramer, in German, subtitled, "Prepare Our Own Meals? This is some kind of trap." The next morning, a group of German officers was escorted to the kitchen facility. What they found inside left them speechless. A fully functional kitchen. Clean. Well-equipped. Stocked with ingredients. Not luxury items, but real food, flour, sugar, meat, vegetables, milk, eggs, butter. General Lieutenant Fritz von Broich, who had commanded the 10th Panzer Division in Tunisia, stood in front of an open refrigerator for a full minute, just staring. Von Broich in German, subtitled, "This cannot be real. Where are the guards? Where are the locks? Who controls the portions?" "American Guard, actor, you do, sir. Within reason, of course. There's a weekly allocation, and you gentlemen can decide how to use it." That night, the German generals held a council. Many were convinced this was psychological warfare, some elaborate American trick to humiliate them or make them complacent. General Kramer, they give us a kitchen, ingredients, freedom to cook. And then what? They poison the food. They use it to mock us. No army treats prisoners this way. Another general, perhaps they want to see if we'll fail, if we'll fight over the food like animals. It's a test of our discipline. Younger officer, or perhaps they simply mean what they say. The Geneva Convention requires. Kramer, interrupting the Geneva Convention. When has any nation truly honored it? We certainly haven't. That last statement hung in the air. They all knew what he meant. They'd all seen, or heard about, how prisoners were treated in German camps, how Soviet prisoners were starved deliberately, how the rules of war had become suggestions at best. The next morning, General Kramer made a decision. They would test this American promise. They would cook a meal. What happened next was almost comical. These were men who had commanded armies, directed complex military operations, made life-and-death decisions affecting thousands. But most of them had never cooked a meal in their lives. In the German military tradition, officers of their rank had orderlies, aides, entire support staffs. Many came from aristocratic families, where cooking was servants' work. Fortunately, among them was Oberst Friedrich von Wangenheim, who had grown up on a farm and actually knew his way around a kitchen. Von Wangenheim, in German, subtitled, "Gentlemen, if we can coordinate a 3-division assault, we can certainly make schnitzel. Hans, you peel potatoes. Fritz, you handle the meat. Everyone else, follow my instructions." What emerged over the next 2 hours was something none of them expected. Not just a meal, but something approaching normalcy. A routine. A sense of purpose beyond just surviving captivity. The meal wasn't fancy. Pork cutlets, boiled potatoes, sauerkraut they'd made from cabbage and vinegar. But it was their meal. Made by their hands. A small piece of autonomy in a world where they'd lost control of everything. As they ate that first meal together, something shifted. The conversation moved from military topics to cooking, food, home. One general, "My wife made potatoes like this. I never appreciated it. I never even asked her how." Another general. I haven't tasted real schnitzel since 1941, before the war, before the shortages. General Kramer, who kept a detailed diary throughout his captivity, wrote that night. Kramer's voice, reading diary entry, "Today we cooked our own meal." A simple thing, perhaps, but it has unsettled me deeply. The Americans allow us this dignity, to prepare our own food, to make our own choices, to retain some measure of humanity. I realize now that I cannot remember the last time we extended such dignity to our prisoners. What kind of army have we been serving? Over the following months, cooking became central to life at Camp Clinton. The German generals organized themselves with military precision, rotating kitchen duty, creating meal schedules, even requisitioning specific ingredients through proper channels. They baked bread from scratch, made stews that reminded them of home, even attempted to brew beer, though that request was politely denied by the Americans. The American guards, many of whom were farm boys from Mississippi and nearby states, found the whole situation surreal. Here were the enemy generals, men who'd fought to conquer the world, now debating the proper temperature for baking strudel. American guard, "My mama makes cornbread. You ever try cornbread, sir?" German officer, in broken English, "Cornbread? No. You show me how." Food became a bridge. American guards shared recipes from home. German officers taught them European techniques. In a prison camp in Mississippi, in the middle of a world war, something unexpected was happening. Enemies were becoming, if not friends, then at least human beings to each other. But this story cannot be told without acknowledging a brutal truth. While German generals cooked schnitzel in Mississippi, Soviet prisoners in German camps were dying of starvation by the thousands. While American guards showed German officers how to make cornbread, Allied prisoners in Germany subsisted on bread made with sawdust and watery soup. The contrast was not lost on the German generals themselves. As the war continued and letters from home became fewer, as news of Germany's deteriorating situation reached them, many began to understand the difference between the army they'd served and the army that now held them captive. Kramer's voice, diary entry. "We are fed better here as prisoners than our own people are fed at home. We have fresh vegetables, while Berlin starves. We cook our own meals, while prisoners in our camps die of hunger. The Americans show us the Geneva Convention means something to them. Can we say the same?" By late 1944, the cooking program at Camp Clinton had become something more than just a practical arrangement. It had become therapeutic. These men, who had spent their lives in rigid military hierarchies, were learning skills they'd never valued before. They were working with their hands, creating something constructive rather than destructive. For Christmas 1944, the German generals prepared an elaborate meal. Using their weekly rations and some special ingredients the camp commander approved, they created a feast: roast pork, potato dumplings, red cabbage, and apple strudel. They invited the American camp commander and several senior guards to join them. Colonel Maxwell, "Gentlemen, this is exceptional. You've done yourselves proud." Colonel Maxwell, "We toast not to war, not to politics, but to the possibility that someday men might share meals rather than exchange bullets. We have learned something here. We hope it is not too late to matter." When Germany surrendered in May 1945, the mood in Camp Clinton was complex. Relief, grief, uncertainty about what came next. Many of the generals learned their homes were destroyed, their families scattered or dead. The world they'd known was gone, but they still cooked. Perhaps now more than ever, those simple routines, peeling potatoes, kneading dough, stirring soup, provided stability in a world that had collapsed around them. As the generals were gradually repatriated to Germany in 1946 and 1947, many took with them notebooks full of recipes. Some had been given by American guards. Others were recreations of German dishes they'd perfected in captivity. General Kramer, in his final diary entry from Camp Clinton, wrote, Kramer's voice, "I came here as a prisoner expecting humiliation. Instead, I learned to cook. The Americans could have broken us. Instead, they taught us that even in defeat, human dignity can be preserved. I returned to Germany not as the same general who commanded tanks in Africa, but as a man who has learned that there is honor in a well-cooked meal, shared with respect. Perhaps that is the lesson we needed most. Camp Clinton represents a fascinating experiment in how we treat prisoners of war. The decision to allow high-ranking German officers to cook their own food wasn't just about Geneva Convention compliance. It was a philosophical statement about American values. The cooking program at Camp Clinton became a model studied by military historians and POW camp administrators. It demonstrated that treating prisoners with dignity didn't make you weak, it made you civilized. After the war, many of the Camp Clinton generals wrote about their experiences. Several mentioned the cooking program specifically. One general, Friedrich von Wangeneem, opened a restaurant in Munich in 1949, serving both German and American dishes. He called it Die Brücke, the bridge. On the wall, he hung a photograph of the Camp Clinton kitchen and a plaque that read, "Where enemies learn to break bread together." This story isn't just about World War II or POW camps or cooking. It's about what happens when we recognize the humanity in our enemies. The Geneva Conventions exist because humans recognized that even in war, there must be rules, that even enemies deserve basic dignity, that treating prisoners humanely isn't weakness, it's civilization itself. Today, American military personnel are trained extensively on the proper treatment of prisoners. And part of that training includes the story of camps like Clinton, places where treating enemies with dignity changed hearts and minds more effectively than any propaganda could. The contrast is stark. In camps where prisoners were degraded and starved, hatred deepened. In camps where prisoners were treated humanely, understanding grew. Not friendship necessarily, but recognition of shared humanity. The next time you cook a meal, consider what a privilege that is. The ability to choose what you eat, to prepare it yourself, to share it with others, to have enough. For the German generals at Camp Clinton, being allowed to cook wasn't just about food. It was about autonomy, dignity, the recognition that even in defeat, even as prisoners, they were still human beings worthy of basic respect. Those German generals expected to be broken. Instead, they learned to cook. They expected humiliation. Instead, they found unexpected dignity. And in that Mississippi kitchen, through the simple act of allowing enemies to prepare their own meals, America demonstrated something powerful. That true strength lies not in how brutally you can treat your enemies, but in how humanely you can treat them while still winning the war. The true character of a society is revealed in how it treats its prisoners. Dostoevsky. Camp Clinton operated from 1943 to 1946 and held over 3,000 German POWs, including 24 generals. The cooking program became a model for humane treatment of prisoners of war. This story honors all who choose dignity over degradation, even in the midst of conflict. While this story focuses on the relatively humane treatment of German generals in American POW camps, it's crucial to remember that not all prisoners were treated equally. Japanese Americans were unjustly interned during World War II, and racial segregation affected American military facilities. The full history is complex and deserves honest examination. The story of Camp Clinton represents an ideal worth striving for, treating all prisoners with the dignity demanded by our shared humanity.